Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome to the City Walk Dock. We're here to commemorate the life of Brad Cook, as you know, and formerly his name is Bradford Ira Cook. He went by Brad. And Brad was born on September 27th, 1954, and if that date sounds familiar to you, that's because it is today. So in Brad fashion, we're going to celebrate his birthday as well as commemorate his life. So I think that just is rather fitting for Brad's humor that we do such a thing. And then as we know, Brad passed away on September 6th, just a couple weeks ago. I'd like to welcome Brad's family and friends to the dock. Lou, in meeting with Lou and talking through a little bit, you guys actually met when you were 18 years old.
Yep.
And then had a little bit of time apart.
Yep.
And then got back together.
Yep.
And then on a crazy and wild trip to Jamaica, he proposed.
Yep.
And 28 years later, you guys were still together. And in this day and age, that is a remarkable feat. So I think that's wonderful. During a lot of Brad's life before he got to Universal, he was working in the automotive industry, I believe the Corvette plant in Kentucky, and then up in Flint, Michigan. And then when he got tired of the cold in the automotive world, he moved down here. And 6 years ago, he joined Universal as a boat captain. And at this point, I'd like to say we have many types of captains. We have them from the age of 18 to 80. We have all variety of colors. We have varieties of creeds. We have a wide variety of countries of origins. And as you look at us as a group, you say, what is the common thread then amongst all of us? And as I've been in training and been through many trainees and many who did not make it and many who did make it, I kind of came to the conclusion that the common denominator that makes a UO captain is that anybody that gets these stripes and survives out here is not a weak person. All right? I think they all have strength, internal strength. Now, they may not talk much, they may talk a little, or they may talk a lot. But they're all strong person, and that's not how you determine whether a person's strong is by how much they talk. And Brad, in his own way, was a unique personality amongst many unique people. And he was by no means a weak person. I'd like to start this section off by working on a question Brad often asked. He often asked about what is the difference between broccoli and boogers? And the answer is, kids don't eat broccoli. That joke was probably told at least every fourth or fifth trip that he brought people in. So, as we were preparing for this, I read what Tanya had put together, and she had some words in there that Lou reiterated this morning that finally made the light shine brighter for me when it came to Brad, and how Brad was and how Brad behaved. And at all times, the guest was Brad's top priority. He wanted them to have a good experience, he wanted them to be happy, he wanted them to feel good, and he worked mornings, so when he brought them into City Walk, he wanted to send them on their way in the best mental state of mind that he possibly could. And based on the number of guest positive comments, which are comments that guests write to us, and it actually takes a lot for a guest to go out of their way to write a comment about us in a positive or negative way that gets through the system and back. And Brad had a lot of them. I think he actually put many of them on his wall, as I recall him telling me. So he was very proud of that and very proud of that achievement. And Brad basically was a one-man floor show. And the show started when he walked up to the guests and he would say, now boarding all first-class passengers. Now right away that makes everybody in his queue, if they're here or out at Royal Pacific, feel special. And I rode with Brad because he was at Royal. We dropped boats at maintenance. We got a ride at Royal back to City Walk to do whatever our next assignment was. And I'd be with him many times and he'd be studying the name tags of the people, you know, the badges, the birthday badges. He would be studying their names and he'd walk up to me, he goes, okay, I saw Tammy, and I saw Jimmy, and I saw whoever it was. He was mentally working on memorizing the names, and when he got on the boat, he made sure that their birthdays were announced. And then he would go and sing happy birthday to them in Polish, which I believe it was, may you live 100 years. So, which I thought that is really amazing. And that takes a lot of energy. Oh, then he had Captain Brad's jokes of the day. And he'd usually end the trip by saying, I have to tell you, I used to be addicted to hokey pokey, but I turned myself around. And, that's how he sent them off. And he wasn't done there. He would get up by the gate right there, and he would high five everybody as they got off. He would personally greet them, and he would personally say goodbye to them. And I try to do that as well, but I can't do that as well as what Brad did. And it was just amazing to see him do that. And the part that came to light to me was Brad working hard to make sure every guest was treated as being important. And the other side of that coin is, if anything stood in his way of making sure that he was getting his guests treated in first-class way, and that would be, an example would be, if I'm training and I was using slip 3 and he came around the corner and saw that I was in his slip and blocking his way to get the guests off, to make, I was interrupting his guests today, he'd be right on that radio and he'd be right on that horn. In no uncertain terms, it was time to move that boat and get out of the way so he could get the guests off. Now that could easily be misinterpreted as Brad's being a pain. And it's easy to interpret that way. But when I saw how he did that, he wasn't that way unless he needed to get guests to where they needed to go. So it was very much a top priority. And, he certainly wasn't afraid to lay on that horn. And Real Thrills has the loudest horn in the fleet. So when Brad made his presence known, he really did a good job of it. Some of the other favorite things about Brad is he was undeniably the greatest minion expert I'd ever met. He knew through Brad, I learned a lot. I'm sure Lou's right up there with him. He knew there are 799 named minions. And I have no idea how he knew that, but I'm going with him. He had an 11-foot Kevin that was the centerpiece of the front yard, especially during the holidays. I'm sure he cried a little bit every time he had to take it down at the end of the holidays. He had a minion backpack. I believe he got the socks. He had a shirt. You guys had matching shirts with minions on them. And anytime he came out and visited, you guys were decked out properly for the occasion. So that was a lot of fun to see. Another unique thing about Brad was he didn't use contractions like I've got this. It's I have this. And some years ago when I started driving with him, he found out that I did weddings and I carried the title of Reverend as an ordained minister. And he would go, just as he'd drive up, I get the rope and he goes, Reverend Rob. And I'd say, well, kids in that environment call me Rev Rob, and that you can call me that. He goes, no contractions, Reverend Rob. And at that point I gave up and said, hey, if you want to call me that, that's cool. And on occasion he would remind me of that. Being a Universal Orlando captain for Brad was massive. That was, very much the centerpiece of his efforts. He loved it. He fit into it well, and he made people feel good, and that was his goal. And in return, that made him feel good. And I learned a long time ago that when some of the captains are out here spieling, some of us tell bad jokes, some of us more than others, and some of us have fun with music. And really, in the end of the day, for us as captains, it's a lot of work in the heat, but actually it's therapy. And I know it was therapy for Brad. It would make him feel good. Whatever else is going on in the rest of the world, this was a way for him to blow off that steam and energy. He makes the people feel good. He feels good. Because I know for spieling, for me, is therapy as well. I know people like Megan, Surf, some of the others that get noted for it. It is actually very good for them. I know it's good for me, and I like it. I have a lot of fun. And I think that was an important component of Brad, and that's where he got a lot of his energy to be the way he was. And I think the other component with Brad was, because I know when he came in, back when Kyla came in as a supervisor, he helped rewrite the SOP. Now, we don't all agree with how the SOP was written, but that is a thankless job with endless debate, and that's something I would prefer never to take on myself, but he did. And I think that showed me another lesson of Brad, and that Brad worked hard to be useful. And up in Indiana years ago, when I'd give a talk to younger people, I would talk about when they're taking on their first job, and that was, look, when you get hired by somebody, be useful. Do something positive. They're paying you, they need you, you need the paycheck. Just go in with the attitude of being useful. And Brad, now we're captains. We don't agree amongst ourselves all the time. Matter of fact, most of the time we don't. But Brad did work to be useful and to do things well, and always, as you mentioned earlier, with the aim of the guest is the top priority. And I think he just worked hard at that. He lived for that. And for one moment, I'd like to talk about, as we talked about, Brad's last day or so on Earth. As I recall, sorry if I tell this part of the story. Brad was at the doctor, what now would be probably September 5th, 4th or 5th, somewhere in that neighborhood. And, he's still having a tough time with the cancer, tough time with the chemo. And his driving goal, what gave him energy in life, a large part of it was coming back to be on the boat. And quite frankly, I think he was looking for some of that therapy, some of that release. I know I do. So when I have a chance to carry guests in between training, I ham it up probably more than normal. And that's me blowing off energy. And I know Brad was probably very much ready to get back on the boat and have fun with guests. And he asked the doctor, he said, is this cancer getting smaller as we expected it to so I can go back to work? Fundamentally, the doctor said no. And even Lou had mentioned that the areas of cancer were expanding and not contracting. And Brad realized then, either through the doctor and through Lou, that he's not coming back to work. And I think that, the human person, the experience of a life, is we're made up of mind, body, and spirit. Brad's body was under massive attack. The cancer was at him, the pain is there, and you need to have something to look forward to get through it. And that's not easy. And with the battle he was fighting, and it wasn't going well, what's left to carry you through is your spirit, and you mentally focus on it. And then when Brad was told he's not coming back to work, I think his spirit took a hit that really turned things upside down. And within 24 hours, Brad was gone. And that's, it's an important lesson. And I think that what Brad, and I'm paraphrasing from some of my experience, what Brad was looking at was, this is not a winning battle. And in this battle, the pain is not only mine. Lou is experiencing it right there with him every step of the way. And it is brutally tough. And I never want to see anybody give up on life, but there comes a point in time where the battle is not going to come out right. And it's better to get it over with. And I think in Brad's way, he was working to save Lou a great deal of pain and prolonged agony. And we know now he is out of pain. He's a better space. He's probably watching this right now. Muncie's probably with him too. They're probably arguing about whatever. And I'm hoping that he's here with us as well. I just think that from that standpoint, there's a lot of admiration I have for Brad. And Brad was not afraid to tell you what he thought, even if it would upset you. So, but I now understand better how Brad worked and how his thinking process was. I never had a problem with Brad. I enjoyed talking to him. I had lunch with him a lot. But I just think that I was far more deeply impressed the more I learned about him and we prepared for today. And with that said, is there anybody, I don't have to hog the stage here, does anybody have anything they would like to say real quick? And I'm just throwing that out there just to cover myself. I'm not asking anybody to step up, but if you do, it's not me standing up here the whole time. But since it is also Brad's birthday, we have a special treat for Brad and for you guys. Are you guys ready? Where'd she go? You ready? Lori and Bonnie are going to sing the Polish birthday song, of which name I can't even say, in honor of Brad, and maybe a little extra something at the end. So.
As long as you don't throw us in the water after.
Yeah, I'm moving this way.
Stola, stola, yay, gia, gia, not stola, stola, yay, gia, gia, not stola, stola, yay, gia, gia, not, yay, gia, not. He sang that all the time. Yeah. And he also sang one other one that he got into his boat every morning to get the guests going, and he would sing, "We love you, you love us, we're more fun than the bus. If you like our hospitality. Marry one of us and you get it free. Sound like him.
Yep. Where do you get that?
He got it off the internet because there used to be a airline stewardess sang it, and he changed the words.
Oh, no
That's
kidding.
where he saw it, and he said, "Oh, I can change this and use this."
He loved it.
I didn't know that. I thought there was some relative in the family or something that taught me.
that's where he
You
got it.
snagged it from the airport.
Yep. There was a guy.
Oh yeah, I mean, I didn't really ask. I just assumed.
Yep.
Unbelievable. Okay. We're actually coming up towards the end of this, and I just wanted to make one or two comments. If you were here for when we did Bob's ceremony, this is very much along the same lines. And it's about us, and Brad being a part of us. And I want to borrow from Universal's marketing a little bit to express our appreciation for everyone being here this morning, because it is early in the morning. You five are amazing to make it. And you'll notice in some of the Universal marketing, you know, they say community is universal, family is universal. And in its brightest and boldest and broadest definition, love is universal. And I say that, the part that they don't add into marketing that I do, is that because you and I make it that way every day. We never forget that. It's okay we don't agree with each other, but at the end of the day, we are family. And I started hearing that from Dennis when he would meet new recruits on the dock. He would say, the first thing you've got to know is we are family. The only thing that I add to that on occasion is we are as dysfunctional as ever. We are a family. If you're wearing the stripes, past or present, you're part of the family. So we have one more tradition, captains. And I've learned a little bit better about this tradition as well, since we kind of made it up as we went along. And that is the final clearance call. So we're going to need all our help with that. And I learned that what a clearance call really is when one of our captains is out of sight. Can't see them. Maybe they can see us, maybe they can't. It is our job to reach out and then let them know it's safe to come home. So you know, any moment, I can hear Brad singing the birthday song in Polish. I can hear his voice telling Captain Brad's jokes of the day, but we know that's not going to happen anymore. From this point forward, we must let Brad go and assume his rightful place in our hearts and our memories. It's time to let him go on home. We have to draw a line in the sand here and now. And when I say I'm going to give the clearance call, and I'm going to modify it for Brad a little bit, but when I point to you, I need everybody to loudly and clearly say, so Brad can hear us, clear, sir. Wait till I point to you on this. The radio call goes like this. Real Thrills, Iowa Bridge, requesting clearance for heaven.
Clear, sir.
Beautifully done. Brad, Godspeed and God bless. We're adjourned, and if you all would like to go for a boat ride, I can't promise water skiing. But if you'd like to go take an honorary boat ride on Brad's boat, Real Thrills, out to Royal, and then they'll actually bring you back too, which is a big thing. We're honored. And thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.